How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. Let's get into the books I read this week. Starting over in Marvel, we have Ultimate X-Men issue number 2 from Peach Momoko, written and drawn by Peach Momoko, which was probably the biggest draw to this book, to be honest with you. A lot of controversy over the first issue because it doesn't actually feature an X-Men team. It's building inside of this issue. We have a character on the front here. I'll let you decide who that is, because honestly, I cannot remember if the name is actually spoken in here, but based on the general look and power set, I do have my assumptions. I do like that this character, our main character Armor, is still like essentially haunted by her past. She had a friend that she was pretty close to, a schoolmate who ended up taking his own life. And my assumption is there's still some unresolved motivations or whatever around that whole entire situation. So she's having these like nightmare dream states, which are, really fun to explore because Peach Momoko does a really good job of, making things look really trippy. Now, totally not learning from previous mistakes from the first issue, she gets a message to meet this mysterious figure who tried to kill her in the previous issue in this apartment complex or abandoned building or whatever. She takes her new friend with her because I guess why not, really? I don't even know. They just meet and she's like, hey, you want to go on an adventure? And this friend's like, sure, let's totally do this. Of course, it turns into a nightmarish hellscape where they have to basically go on the run from being devoured by presumably the Shadow King. And I think we get a little bit more confirmation about that towards the end, but I'll let you see exactly what that is and you can draw your own conclusions. But I will say that, Peach's art style is very unique, right? And I think it works in certain stories. I think if this book wasn't called Ultimate X-Men and it was called Ultimate Armor or something like that, then we can give it some passes. But if it's an X-Men book, I want a full team established. I don't really want a team that eventually gets put together just by happenstance fighting a familiar X-Men foe. Not entirely sure what is going on inside the story, inside this book. I don't know why it's called X-Men, but who knows? If you have any ideas, let me know down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys thought. Philip Kennedy Johnson still doing Incredible Hulk. We're on issue number 11. Now, I haven't read Incredible Hulk for, I think, 2 issues, perhaps, just because it's a book that was it just felt very episodic to me. The art shifts were just too much. It felt like every couple of issues, we had a whole new art team on here. And like I said, it turned into like a Monster of the Month kind of a book. Now, Hulk is teamed up with this younger girl right now who's running from her own demons, an abusive father. Her brother, I believe, was killed in the first issue, or maybe they covered that in the first issue, something like that. So she's running from a lot of demons herself. She idolizes the Hulk because the Hulk can presumably like take on anything, you know what I mean? And she wants that strength, that inner strength that the Hulk can imbue her with. So they're really going on the run right now, eventually leading up to this big battle against the Eldest, who I don't think we've actually covered yet or have defined at this point. There's even some conversation about that person being Adina from the Blade Run, but I've kind of abandoned that theory at this point because why hide it in one book and not in the other book? But in this story here, they do focus a little bit more about the codependency that Hulk has with this girl that's kind of with him right now, his companion. She's been wrapped up with like the Nephilim, which is essentially this cult or following of Lucifer, a fallen angel. And this Nephilim has basically trapped her soul inside of a tiny jar, and the Hulk's doing everything he can do to beat this Nephilim up, or this angel, and kind of free her from her captivity, right? But like the art in this book, it works in some panels and it really doesn't work in other panels. Overall, I don't like it, to be honest with you. Again, this is like it feels like the third or fourth art team on this whole series. It's a very episodic thing. It's just Monster of the Month, like I said, and it's really not doing it for me. I'm glad I did the pulse check. I can wait another few issues, but let me know if I missed anything grand in the last couple of issues down below in the comments. DC Black Label killing it with Batman First Night from Dan Jurgens, Perkins, and Spicer. This is issue number 2. This book wasn't even on my radar, to be honest with you, issue number 1. And when I got to the shop, store owner was like, dude, you got to read it. It's amazing. And I'm so glad I did because this is a really cool like retelling of Batman year 1, essentially. So this book is taking place in the late 30s. So we're like Depression era, coming out of the war and everything. And like tempers are still flaring all over the place. A lot of political stuff going on. And Gotham is not immune to like the Nazi uprising and just, corruption all over the place. And so Batman's having to live inside this world, crooked cops and politicians and just people doing whatever they can do to just, screw over the basic Gothamite just, for their own game. In the previous issue, we were introduced introduced to basically these like zombie men. We get a little bit more of that in here. They're essentially these unstoppable undead monsters of men that are very formidable. You can't really kill them or destroy them. And we get a little bit more face time with those characters in here. We get some assassination attempts for people higher up. We get some amazing high flying action with Batman in here taking on some of the goons. Everything from like street level stuff to this main plot where we're basically up against these zombie men. There's a lot of commentary about like the political scene across the world and just how humans treat each other in general, which I think just adds a level of complexity and a level of like, I don't know, like maturity to a Batman book, to be honest with you. A lot of cool, interesting characters in here. It gets a little preachy from time to time, but this is like the rough, gritty, like real world example maybe of what Batman could be or how he would operate inside of a city like this, dealing with the political landscape that he's in. And I'm just having a great time reading this book. The colors are bright and vibrant. Man, Mike Spicer, as always, doing a killer job. Perkins on the art, doing everything he can do to accentuate Dan Jurgens' book here. And so, man, I really dug this book a lot. So First Nite issue number 2, really good. Check out issue number 1 if you haven't yet. I think it's going to make a great series when it's done. All right, continuing DC, we have Superman Action Comics issue number 1064. Joshua Williamson is on this one. I was a little hesitant to get back into action with the creator shift from Jason Aaron. He did a really good Bizarro run. I didn't really know too much about Bizarro, and it was cool to get that spotlight and just to see what the repercussions of that story might be. Now we're going to go into this issue here, and there's really not a whole lot of carryover from that arc right there, but we have a brand new, exciting, just thrilling nonstop issue, basically having to do with a combination of powers with Brainiac and Lobo's like race of people just, invading Earth and just kicking everyone's ass. And it's just like so cool. So we have these mechs from Brainiac's side and we have these Zarnians, if that's how you pronounce it, all attacking at the exact same time with the purpose of disabling and capturing all the different superheroes around. And we're going to figure out what exactly that means coming up very soon. And we also have a Lobo-like character I'm not too familiar with. Maybe long-term DC fans will recognize the character, but he comes down and really starts preaching to Earth and to Superman himself, saying basically, you guys aren't so tough. We're here to do a job and there's nothing you can do to stop us. So I will say the book was really cool, seeing all the different heroes teaming up, trying to do everything they can do to stop this like unbeatable force. We get some Lex Luthor stuff in here too, jumping into action. We have like LexCorp stepping up as well, trying to help Superman however he can, providing him some resources. But it's just at the end of the day, is it enough to stop this invasion? We're going to find out in the next issue. So action-packed issue coming out of a cool run from Jason Aaron. So Joshua Williamson doing a great job on Action Comics. Check it out. All right, let's go over to Boom Studios for Uncanny Valley issue number 1 from Tony Fleece and Dave Watcher. So this book really wasn't on my radar, but I went ahead and found a copy. So I read it and it was actually really, really cool. It's very reminiscent of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, meaning there is the reality that we're all living in, just trying to cope and everything. But there's also this animated layer on top that is driven by some mystical power. We don't quite understand what it is, but it develops in a real exciting, explosive way throughout this book. It features this boy who's actually living with his mother right now. Dad's not in the picture. I think the implication is that the dad passed away. They're just trying to do the best they can do, going to a new town or whatever. He's getting in trouble at school. Mom's having to like discipline him and things like that. The kid starts trying to like justify his actions, like, no, I didn't cause that fire in the lunchroom. Something happened and I blacked out. Mom's picking up some clues here, realizing he's becoming of age where like this power that his family has will start emerging. And of course, everything goes to hell after that when they're under attack by this evil force. And then a very big surprise guest, the kid's grandfather, shows up, and it's this whole thing like a Yosemite Sam kind of a character. And it was way over the top and awesome. It's very reminiscent of Kill Your Darlings, I would say, or even something like Something Epic in a way, with like overlapping realities, cartoonish kinds of things in the real world. I think the conversations were handled very naturally. The art was something spectacular as well. So highly recommend Uncanny Valley issue number 1. Make sure to check it out. Let's jump over to Image Comics for Transformers issue number 7, still written by Daniel Warren Johnson, but we have Jorge Corona on here and Mike Spicer on the art. So I remember for a long time, pretty much whenever we realized that Daniel Warren Johnson was not going to draw this thing indefinitely, whenever we heard that it was going to be taken over by somebody else, I can just feel the people's blood pressures rising. And I'm like, let's just see what it looks like. Surely they're not going to do what other people do, looking at you, Marvel, and completely change the art style whenever that shift occurs, just leading to the most jarring, unsettling experience for a reader. But I gotta say, this transition here was handled, I think, flawlessly. It was done so well. If you look at some of these pages, quickly and you're not super familiar with Daniel Warren Johnson, I bet that you wouldn't even notice that something has changed. Mike Spicer's treating this line work exactly the same as he would with Daniel Warren Johnson, and I think it really helps that transition of art duties, not to mention the storytelling and dialogue and like the automatopoeia with words in the background. That stuff is completely unchanged as well, just helping out with that overall experience. So enough about that whole thing. What about the story itself? The Decepticons were actually put to shame by the Autobots and some of the human resistance. Now they're regrouping. There's some conversations about maybe a change in leadership. There's some really cool fan favorite Decepticons stepping up to the challenge right now to take over leadership, and the battle is epic. It's brutal. It is amazing. I am all for it. I'm not even a giant I haven't been a huge Transformer fan growing up, but I am super excited for this book every single time it comes out. It also maintains that human Autobot relationship as well, where they're kind of sharing personal experiences, finding that parallel between their races. That's really cool. Maintains that inside of this one as well. And in classic Transformers fashion so far, it leaves us in a good space where we're just super excited for the next issue. So I cannot wait for this series to continue. I was nervous on the art shift. Not anymore. This book was awesome. What'd you guys think? Continuing image, we have Napalm Lullaby issue number 2 from Rick Remender. Now, issue number 1 was intriguing. It had a lot of cool places the book could go, but I think it lacked a little bit of focus on our main characters. We didn't really see them until halfway through the book, and we didn't get a good explanation about who they were, what their motives were. We realized towards the end they basically want to take down whatever kind of religious regime or power is over the land right now, and they have some of the artifacts to do so. This book right here really explores the two main characters a little bit more, introduces their father, who basically set the stage and the foundation for their belief systems, and we get to learn a little bit more about like what his motives and rationale is for being in this space. And basically he's an older guy right now trying to collect a lot of the relics of the past, so he has something to either look back on or something to aim his efforts to get back into the life, right? Like how can we get back to the good old days, something like that, even though the good old days are never as good as you remember them to be. So this book here really focuses on the family element here and the dynamic between them. We get some showcases of power in here from our main characters, who I thought it was all like illusionary at first, but maybe there's some like real world implications as well to their power sets that can affect reality itself. But maybe that's me reading into it a little bit too literally. Now, the original plan was to steal these artifacts from these religious figures in the area to infiltrate this heaven-like state that this culture has set up. That's exactly what we do inside of here. There's some comedic moments here and there, and again, there's some small usage of powers. The dialogue is probably the best part about this book so far. It's not necessarily the direction or the motive or the characters themselves. I just like the family dynamic and some of the conversations that they have. Again, the usage of power could be a little bit better in here, and there's a little bit of an abrupt ending, I think, towards the end of this book. So Napalm Lullaby, it's been okay so far. It's going to have to win me over with a couple more issues. Maybe a trade read would be better for this one. That's my general feeling after issue number 2. We'll check out 3 and see where it goes from there. All right, closing it out in IDW's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, issue number 5 from Horvath. Man, this book is outstanding. You definitely have to read in this book. I've been saying it month after month. One of my favorite books out right now. Major revelations in the past couple of issues. We have Sam, our main character, who's our secret serial killer inside of our town. Everything she's done, her shady past, how she's manipulated the town that she's living in right now. All that stuff is out in the open right now. She is actually on the run, and this copycat serial killer is basically like owning her life at this moment. She's bouncing around right now, trying to escape the authorities, trying to stay incognito, but her past is definitely catching up with her in here. What really surprised me about this issue, though, is it's just drenched with metaphor and meaning, which is really cool to see in here, basically having to go into like the deepest, darkest parts of your soul to like kind of reorient yourself, level set a little bit, get some perspective, realize who you are, and channel that in a way where you can respond in some kind of meaningful and productive way. That's what this was all about, I think. So instead of like being on the run, she takes the initiative. She sees that beast, right? She unravels that bag of snakes that she finds within inside of her, and she takes things into her own hands, going and planning for the next step. How is she going to retaliate? How is she going to get back the upper hand in this situation? So Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, issue number 5, one of my favorite issues in this run so far, one of my favorite series out right now. Definitely read it. All right, guys, that's everything I read this week. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know down below in the comments what you read and what your favorite books of the week were. While you're down there, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted whenever I put out new videos. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the comments.